This happened 3 years ago in northern Arizona, just outside Flagstaff. I wasn't camping illegally. I wasn't trespassing. I had a permit, a reserved site, and a planned overnight solo trip before starting a new job. It was supposed to be quiet. I arrived just before sunset. The campground was nearly empty, midweek in October. Cold air. No wind. The kind of stillness that makes your ears ring. There were only 2 other vehicles in the lot. One pickup truck with no plates, which I assumed belonged to a ranger, and a gray SUV parked crooked, like someone left in a hurry. I didn't think much of it. I hiked about half a mile from the parking area to my assigned backcountry clearing. The GPS pin matched the paper map. Site 14B. But when I got there, something was off. The clearing was bigger than expected. Not just a small open space, this was wide, circular, too symmetrical. The trees formed a near-perfect ring around it, like something had cleared the center intentionally. And there were no fire rings, no old charcoal, no footprints, just flat, compacted dirt, like it had been swept. I checked the marker post, 14B, so I set up camp. By 10:30 p.m., the forest was silent. No insects, no wind, no distant traffic, just absolute stillness. At around midnight, I woke up, not from a sound, from a change in pressure. That's the only way I can describe it. Like when someone opens a door in another room. The air shifted. I opened my eyes inside the tent. Complete darkness. Then I heard it. Footsteps. Slow. Even. Circling the clearing. Not stepping on leaves, there weren't many in the clearing itself, but stepping on the packed dirt just beyond my tent. One full circle. Then another. Measured. Not hurried. I told myself it was a deer. But deer don't walk in perfect circles. And they don't pause directly behind your head. The steps stopped. Silence again. I held my breath and waited for the sound of sniffing or hooves or something to confirm it was an animal. Nothing. Just the absence of sound. After maybe 2 minutes, the footsteps resumed, but farther out now. Near the tree line. Another slow circle. Then nothing. I didn't unzip the tent. I didn't move. Eventually I fell asleep. When I woke up at 6:40 a.m., the clearing looked different. There were marks in the dirt. Not footprints. More like shallow scuffs. Circular. Like something had dragged along the perimeter of my tent. I took pictures. Still have them. No clear shoe pattern. No hoof impressions. Just disturbed soil forming a ring. I packed up early. On the way back toward the trailhead, I noticed something else. There was no path leading to that clearing. None. The trail on my GPS showed a fork that should have cut east toward Site 14B. But in reality, the fork didn't exist. I walked back and forth 3 times. There was only one main trail. No east turn. No marker. I checked the physical map again. It clearly showed 14B. But when I reached the ranger station that afternoon to ask about it, the woman behind the counter frowned. "We don't have a 14B in that sector." I showed her the permit. She went quiet. Left the desk. Came back 5 minutes later. "That site number doesn't exist anymore." "What do you mean anymore?" She hesitated. "It was decommissioned in 2018. "Why?" She didn't answer that directly. She just said, "That clearing shouldn't be accessible." I showed her the photos. The circular scuffs around my tent. She stared at them longer than I expected. Then she asked, "Did you hear anything?" I didn't want to sound dramatic. "Footsteps," I said. "Maybe an animal." She didn't nod. She didn't agree. She just slid the permit back to me and said, "You shouldn't camp there again." I asked if anyone else had reported something similar. She paused too long before saying no. That night, back home, I checked my GPS route history. The recorded trail line showed something strange. Instead of a straight hike into the clearing, the path curved, slightly circular, around the spot before entering it. Like I had walked around something first. But I hadn't. I walked straight in. There was one more detail I didn't notice until weeks later. In one of the photos I took of the clearing at dawn, zoomed in near the tree line, there's a narrow vertical shape behind one of the trunks. Could be a shadow. Could be nothing. But it's positioned exactly at the point where the footsteps stopped behind my tent. And I don't remember any tree that thin standing there. I tried finding the clearing again 2 months later. Same forest. Same sector. I never found it. And when I checked the updated online campground map the next year, That entire area was marked as Restricted Rehabilitation Zone. No explanation. No archived site number. Just blank. I still have the permit. It still says 14B. And I still don't know why the dirt around my tent formed a perfect circle. This happened in Washington State, near the edge of Olympic National Forest. Late September. Cold but not freezing. I was on a solo overnight hike. Nothing extreme. Just a marked trail, one night out, back the next afternoon. I chose that route because it was supposed to be quiet. No road noise. No popular viewpoints. No through traffic. The ranger website said the old fire tower along that trail had been decommissioned years ago. That detail matters. I started hiking around 3 p.m. By the time I reached my planned campsite, it was just past sunset. The forest out there is dense, tall firs, thick undergrowth, limited visibility even during the day. At night it feels sealed, like the trees absorb sound. I set up my tent in a small designated clearing about a mile from where the fire tower was supposed to be. I'd passed the junction sign earlier, weathered wood, arrow pointing uphill, old tower, 1.2 miles. There was caution tape loosely wrapped around the post. I assumed that was just to discourage climbing it. By 11:47 p.m., I remember the time because I checked. I was still awake, not anxious, just listening. Forest sounds, occasional branch movement. Nothing unusual. Then I saw it. A thin vertical beam of white light cutting through the trees uphill. Not sweeping, not flickering, just steady. High enough to be elevated, like it was coming from the top of something. I sat up in the tent and stared at the glow filtering between trunks. It wasn't bright like a spotlight, more like a lantern, but powerful, controlled. My first thought was, another camper. Second thought, ranger doing a patrol. But the website clearly said the tower was inactive, and there were no vehicles in the lot besides mine. I watched the light for about 10 minutes. It didn't move. It didn't dim. It just stayed on. That's what made it worse. Curiosity beat common sense. I grabbed my flashlight and started walking uphill. I told myself I'd just confirm it was someone camping up there. The trail to the tower was narrower than the main path, overgrown in places, like it hadn't been maintained recently. About halfway up, my phone lost service. That wasn't unusual, but it felt important. As I climbed higher, the light became clearer. It was definitely coming from the tower. And it wasn't just a lantern. It was the main enclosed cab at the top, fully illuminated, bright white, like fluorescent lighting. I reached the base around 12:25 a.m. The tower didn't look abandoned. The structure was intact. No broken steps, no rot, no vandalism. The door at the base was slightly open, and I could hear something faint. Not voices, not movement. A low electrical hum, like old ballast lighting. I stood there for a long time, waiting for someone to come down. No one did. I called out once. Hello? No answer. The hum continued, steady. I climbed the first few steps. They didn't creak. That bothered me more than if they had. Halfway up, I realized something else. There was no wind. At ground level, it had been still. But up there, exposed like that, there should have been some movement. The trees were motionless. When I reached the top landing, I could see through the windows. Inside the cab, everything was clean. The old radio unit, map board on the wall, and a chair, facing the window opposite me. Not toward the stairs, not toward the entrance, facing outward, toward the forest. The lights inside were definitely on, bright enough to make the glass reflective. I knocked on the door. The hum stopped. Immediately. No delay. Just silence. And the lights stayed on. I waited. 30 seconds. Nothing. I tried the handle. Locked. I leaned closer to the window to see inside. That's when I noticed something I hadn't at first. The chair wasn't empty. There was something on it. Not a person. Clothing. A jacket draped neatly over the back. And beneath it, boots on the floor, placed side by side, like someone had taken them off carefully. I stepped back from the window. That's when the lights went out. All at once. Complete darkness. No gradual flicker. Just black. And the forest around me suddenly felt louder. Branches shifting. Leaves brushing. But still no wind. I didn't wait. I went down the stairs faster than I should have. Not running, but not calm. When I reached the base, I looked back up. No light. Just the outline of the tower against the sky. As I walked back down toward my campsite, I had the distinct feeling of being watched. Not from the ground. From above. I didn't look back again. I packed up at 3 a.m. Didn't sleep. Hiked out in the dark. When I reached the trailhead parking lot, there was another vehicle there. Parked beside mine. A white utility truck with no markings. No plates. No logo. I hadn't heard anyone arrive. The engine was cold. I stood there for a while. No one inside. No one around. The driver's side door was unlocked. I didn't open it. I left. When I got home later that day, I checked the official Forest Service site again. The fire tower page had been updated. Now read, structure removed for safety reasons. Removed. I'd stood inside it the night before. I went back a month later. Hiked the same trail. The junction sign for the tower was gone. The path uphill was barely visible. And when I reached the clearing where the tower should have been, there was nothing there. No foundation. No debris. No evidence anything had ever stood in that spot. Just undisturbed forest floor. If I hadn't taken photos at the base, photos that clearly show the tower stairs and structure, I might have convinced myself I imagined it. But here's the part that still bothers me. In one of the photos I took while standing below the tower, you can see the window clearly. The lights are on. The chair is there. The jacket is draped over it. And in the reflection on the glass, there's a second light source behind me. High up in the trees. Not from my flashlight. Not from the moon. And I don't remember seeing it that night. This happened last November in rural Montana, in a stretch of state forest about 40 minutes outside Missoula. Not a national park. No entrance booth. No posted ranger hours. Just miles of logging roads and marked backcountry zones. I wasn't inexperienced. I'd done solo overnights before. I carried a GPS unit, paper maps, emergency battery, satellite communicator. This wasn't reckless. It was supposed to be quiet. I drove in around 5 p.m. just before sunset. The dirt access road was empty. No fresh tire tracks except mine. The deeper I drove, the worse the road got. Ruts, loose gravel, tight turns between tree lines. I picked a small clearing about 200 yards off the road. Not an official campsite. Just a flat patch between tall pines. No fire ring. No trash. No sign anyone had used it recently. That's what I wanted. Complete isolation. I set up my tent facing east toward the tree line. The forest was dense enough that once it got dark, there would be almost no ambient light. By 10:15 p.m., the temperature had dropped fast. The kind of cold that makes the ground stiff. No insects. No wind. Just the occasional crack of distant wood settling. I fell asleep quickly. I woke up at 1:32 a.m. I know the exact time because my watch vibrated with a low battery warning. That's what I thought had woken me. But that wasn't it. There was light outside my tent. Not bright. Not like headlights. More like a soft, steady glow. And it wasn't coming from the road. It was coming from deeper in the forest. Behind my tent. I stayed still. Listened. Nothing. No engine. No voices. No footsteps. Just that faint glow seeping through the fabric. I unzipped the tent slowly and stepped out. The clearing was dark. Completely dark. No glow. No light source. The trees behind my tent were black silhouettes. I stood there for a full minute, letting my eyes adjust. Nothing. I almost convinced myself I'd dreamed it. Then I noticed something else. About 30 yards into the trees, directly behind where my tent faced, there was another clearing. Small. Almost identical in size to mine. And in the center of it was a tent. Same color as mine. Same shape. Same size. I don't mean similar. I mean identical. Same brand. Same model. Same small reflective strip near the zipper seam. It was positioned the same direction. Facing my clearing. I didn't hear anyone set it up. I didn't hear anyone walk in. And there had been no tire tracks on the road. I didn't move closer. I just stood there, waiting for movement. Nothing. The tent was zipped closed. No lantern light inside. No sound. After maybe 5 minutes, I went back into my tent and zipped it shut. I told myself it was coincidence. Someone else had driven in late, set up quietly, maybe parked farther down the road. That explanation made sense. Until morning. When I woke up at 7:10 a.m., the second clearing was gone. Not empty. Gone. There was no second clearing. No flattened grass. No broken twigs. Just dense trees. Undisturbed forest floor. I walked exactly 30 yards back from my tent. Then 40. Then 50. Nothing. No sign anyone had been there. No footprint. No tent stakes. No impression in the soil. And the ground was soft enough that it would have left something. I checked my GPS location history. It showed my campsite exactly where I'd placed it. But when I zoomed out slightly, there was a second waypoint, marked automatically at 1:34 a.m., 30 yards behind my tent. I never placed that marker. I didn't even have the device out at that time. I deleted it. Packed up. What? On the drive out, I noticed something I hadn't on the way in. About half a mile from my clearing, off the side of the dirt road, was a patch of ground that looked recently disturbed. Like something heavy had been parked there repeatedly. Deep indentations. But no fresh tracks leading in or out. Just that compressed section. When I reached the paved highway, I pulled over to check my gear. Everything was where it should be. Except one thing. My tent stakes. 4 of them had been replaced. Same size. Same color. But newer. No scratches. No dirt. Mine had been slightly bent from previous trips. These were straight. I know that sounds minor, but I'm certain. I inventory my gear obsessively. I still have the originals at home. Bet. Marked with red tape near the top. The ones I packed that morning had no tape. That night, when I reviewed the photos from my phone, I found one taken at 1:33 a.m. A photo I don't remember taking. It was dark, blurry, but visible in the distance, faintly illuminated, was my tent. Shot from behind. From the direction of where the second clearing had been. And in the foreground at the bottom edge of the frame, you can see part of another tent zipper. Identical to mine. Partially open. I never went back. I checked satellite imagery months later. That entire section of forest is now labeled as temporary restricted logging zone. No explanation. No public notices. Just marked closed. What bothers me most isn't that there was another tent. It's that if someone had been there, they were positioned perfectly to watch me. And if that photo was taken from inside the second tent, then whoever was there was awake at 1:33 a.m., standing behind me. And I never heard them leave.